Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director of Epic Made, and we are the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on the professional art and creative space.
As always, this episode is brought to you by Epic Made. Epic Made creates memorable animation, digital art, and graphic design to help elevate brands. We are a collective of talented artists and storytellers across a multitude of disciplines. Together, we can handle the creativity and communication on any project. Epic Made has created commercials, key art, social content, and more for leading entertainment brands like SYFY Network and Nickelodeon and many more. To learn more, go to getepicmade.com or send an email at hey@getepicmade.com.
And today we have here Chad Franzen of Rise 25. He's done hundreds of interviews with successful entrepreneurs, investors, and CEOs, and today he will be interviewing us. Glad to have you, Chad. Again, second episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, great to be here. Great to talk to you guys again. How's everything going?
Great. Yeah.
Really
Good.
well.
But good.
Can't complain. Busy.
That's always good to hear. Always good to hear. Hey, today I wanted to talk about kind of your process in terms of doing work for clients, especially maybe in an animated commercial or a piece of animated work that you guys do for a client. Can you guys give me an example of some clients that you have worked with where you have done animated commercials?
Sure. I mean, so we've done, like we mentioned in the intro, so we've done work with SYFY, USA Network, TNT. We've done some stuff for Cox Communications, Nickelodeon, Nick Jr. We've done some stuff for the WWE. We did a little piece of social media content for SpongeBob last summer, which was really cool because we all kind of grew up loving SpongeBob. So that was one of those pieces that everyone was excited to work on. But yeah, basically, most of the large entertainment brands on planet Earth we've done some work for.
Great. So
Yeah, at least one project.
today I think we're going to look just a little bit at an example of some of the work that you guys have done. I think you guys did this one that we're going to see for SYFY. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, it was actually SYFY, part of their Pride Month campaign. So this was a house ad for SYFY, showing their solidarity with the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
Yep. So it aired on June 2020.
June 2020 as part of
their network.
Pride Month.
Yeah, it was on their network, and it was also on social media, live streaming, all that. We actually had people call us like, "Hey, I saw your thing. It was awesome." Like, it was just cool.
Yeah, very cool. So, before doing this one, had you worked with SYFY before?
No.
So,
No, this was actually, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
take me through the whole process then. So, you guys are already established as a company or whatever, but you hadn't worked for SYFY before. Take me through the process up starting there.
Correct. So yeah, I'd started this company in 2006. So at this point, it was 2020. Just actually 2019, right? So just before the pandemic, we were sitting in our office late 2019, trying to come up with ideas of how do we get out of the mom and pop kind of local business space so that we knew we had more to offer, and that the bigger budgets will allow us to be more creative and do more of what we were capable of doing, right? Where we were really stuck, nothing like I loved small business, and small business is amazing, and we're a small business, right? But they, aren't typically able to afford to be able to invest at the level of things that we wanted to be able to create. So we started kind of having these internal discussions looking for how do we find these opportunities? We don't know anybody in these bigger spaces, but we, Ross and I and John knew we had the talent and the swagger to deliver on the highest level. We just didn't have the opportunity. So we ended up finding a couple of agencies, one of them in particular out west in LA, that puts out RFPs with these big brands. And I was like, okay, well, let's try this. And we actually put out, what was it, Ross? 20 RFPs?
No, yeah. Probably, I mean, it was, we had, our RFP is a request for proposal for anyone who doesn't know. And basically what that is an agency will put out a call to action for any creative industry or agency who wants to kind of throw their hat in, and then it's like a bidding war, more or less, or a bake off for who gets the project. And nobody gets paid to do that for the most, or at least we weren't getting paid to do that. So we were basically throwing our hat in for free, along with all these other agencies. And yeah, we spent maybe 10, possibly even 20 attempts before we landed a project. We got like finalists a few times where they were like, "Oh yeah, you almost made it," but nothing substantial for that. And none of them had huge budgets either, because going through another agency, you know, they're constantly cannibalizing it down to before it even gets to a creative agency who's going to do the actual work. Everyone's kind of has their hand in the pot.
And because the RFP process in itself kind of forces everyone to be like it's very kind of ruthless, right? Most people are wasting their time, right? But like like I mentioned before, you know, we just have an unyielding tenacity, and I don't give up on anything. Like I don't, like, if you only fail when you quit, right? So like I was just like, hey, let's keep going. They keep giving us little attaboys, right? So again, I think we actually pitched on, I think it was like 10 different projects with 2 ideas for each project. And like even on this this SYFY one we pitched on, it was like a house ad for Pride Month. And we pitched on it and they said no. They said we were finalists and like, you know, thank you, keep applying. I mean, we hired a videographer friend of ours, Rebel Society, Shad Harris, who's amazing, by the way. He does crazy good video. And he came in and shot me, John, and Ross. We made a ridiculous pitch video to go with our pitch deck where we're just being goofy and funny and showing off our work and really letting our character shine through. As human beings, we went the extra mile, right? So they still declined us. They'd already had previous relationships with companies that, you know, they basically are still mitigating the risk. Like that's their biggest job. Like, hey, we're going to bring in these people. But SYFY came to them apparently. It was like, hey, we'd actually like a few more videos. Do you guys have anyone else? So we got personally selected and got an email by one of the directors over there. It's like, hey, SYFY came to us. They want more videos. I know we said that, you know, you guys didn't make the cut on this one, but we'd actually like to give you one. And I was like, oh my God, like we all flipped out. I was literally like, I was crying. I was so excited because we hadn't had the opportunity to deliver on that level. So we jumped on it and, you know, the rest is history. We absolutely crushed that video. So
That's
it's
awesome.
still one of our favorites.
That is awesome.
3 years
So
later,
they tell you they want a video. What happens next? Do they give you like specs or something? What happens next?
Yeah. So I could probably speak a little bit better to this. So like any normal client, there are specs preemptively in the RFP. There are actually specs that, you know, they release ahead of time where it depends largely on how they're going to use the video, where they're going to place the video. You know, something on TikTok is going to have to be 9:16, whereas something on YouTube needs to be 16:9 in terms of the aspect ratio of the video. Different resolutions for social media, and so on and so forth. So we actually already had a lot of that information ahead of time. As far as the concept of the video, it was largely up to us within the realm of represent the SYFY network and Pride Month together as one unit. And so we had provided a few ideas, one of which was the Rapunzel idea that ended up being chosen. That was actually workshopped a lot with one of the directors at this agency we were talking with. We went back and forth a little bit on what that idea should be. And that's kind of how it is for most clients as well. We kind of set up a kickoff meeting or like a conceptual meeting where I will talk with a client, or me and Carl and I will talk with a client and get just the general, in the industry, it's typically called a blue sky conversation where anything goes. Like you can kind of say any idea and nothing's really considered a dumb idea. And just kind of narrowed down into why we're doing a thing, what's the best way it's going to be represented visually, what symbolism should we use, and kind of so on and so forth. that's kind of how it starts.
Okay. Let's take a look at the video at least one time here, and then you guys can kind of break down like your thought process. Maybe you got into huge debates over some part of the content, something like that. So let's take a look at it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
So nostalgic. It always gives me the goosies. Yeah, I mean, so all these things start with the ideas, right? And then it's like we go from there with, Ross is always like, all right, so what's this going to cost us? Like time and labor and like timeline. And then he and I have to have a real conversation about like, well, what's the big goal here? And this one, it was a unique position that we hadn't really been in before because I literally did not care about what we were getting paid on this. I wanted to make sure that this was something we could hang our hat on for a really long time. So I saw this no matter what it cost me as a marketing expense and an elevation of my company entirely. So like, yeah, I mean, we ended up, Ross and I kind of went back and forth in that conversation. And then, once I give him that green light, then it's just like, all right, what can we get done in the timeline? I don't care what we throw at it. So then, then I kind of just pass that back to Ross. But
I forgot, how long did you say you had?
So we actually only had, I think, like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
like it was a relatively short timeline for like a on-air commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for the first network level on-air commercial we had ever done. And obviously we weren't about to tell anybody that, but
yeah.
But
Poker Face was real serious.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea.
But the timeline was really the biggest constraint, because we were, like Carl said, we were kind of all we kind of had this consensus that we were going to throw everything we had at it because it was going to be the jumping off point. We were going to hold this up like a badge of honor that we did work for a sci-fi network. And it was, he ended up doing this, but at the time we firmly believed that it was going to be the first of many pedigree badges that we could acquire to say, hey, we can do top quality world class work and get it past the approvals of these major networks, which is not something every studio can do.
Totally.
And so yeah, the timeline was a big part of it, and also just what the team was capable of doing at the time, because we only had one or two other full-time people to work like that was able to like just crunch time with me on working day and night on this thing for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
So in terms of like the nitty gritty, then so you have 3 weeks and you don't have anything done yet, but you have kind of an idea. You have this idea. What does it look like from there?
So it starts with a storyboard typically. So a storyboard is like a comic strip, more or less, of what the animation will be. It's a bunch of sketches. Usually the clearer the sketch, the better, so that the client understands where you're going as well, right? Like you understand your own scribbles, but most of the time when you're presenting this, you need it to be a little bit prettier than that. So, so we worked probably for the first 3-4 days on working out all the camera shots, and what the pacing of it was going to be like, and from start to finish what the actual story was going to be, because by this point the only thing we really had was we're going to do this Rapunzel story. The knight is going to end up being a woman by the end, and that's going to be the pride twist on the classic story where this knight scales the tower for the princess.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to come up with all of the specifics at the time. And when we submitted the storyboard, we knew we were kind of on the right track because it was the first storyboard that this agency had ever submitted to SYFY that didn't have any revisions. Like
they told us.
Yeah, they came back to us ecstatic. They were like, "Oh my god, we had never seen this before." SYFY doesn't have anything to say. They just want you to move forward. Like, and so
which made me and Ross just like, we got it.
Oh, yeah. It was an incredibly qualifying moment in our careers where, but at this point, it's hard to tell if you have like imposter syndrome, right? Where you think that you're either better than you are or not, or you're worse than you are, right? You don't have a way of qualifying or quantifying your skill. And this was one of the first moments where Carl and I could honestly sort of unequivocally look at the business and be like, okay, we have something, right? SYFY said they don't want any revisions. They love our idea. They love the camera work, all of this conceptual work that we've done. They're just like, yeah, do it.
So validating.
Yeah, that's great. So, in terms of the storyboarding process, how many people are involved in that?
Usually it's a very small amount. Most of the time, now it's basically just me and our lead artist, Akira. But at the time, we had put a couple of other hands into the mix. Like Carl was quasi involved. We had shared this with a few other members of the team to just see what they thought. Like we were really putting this one through the rounds as far as making sure that it was as good as it could be, but it was still primarily done by one or two people.
And then, okay, so they're thrilled about your storyboard, and then take it away from there.
Yeah. So in the storyboard phase, once that's kind of taken care of, take those panels and you lay them out in a video track with music so that you can get the pacing. Because like a comic, it's hard to tell how long something is on screen if you're just reading it. It's kind of you kind of take your time looking at each image, and you can be on a page for 30 seconds or 5 minutes. It's up to you. But that's not how video works. So we do what's called an animatic. It's pretty standard in the industry. It's called a couple of other things, like a AIGA, I believe, is another term for it in the industry. And we take all of the rough, super sketchy, drafty storyboard frames and lay them out, paced in a way that they will represent the video pacing. And that's when we add music, like the music that you heard on the video. We laid that in after finding it on one of their, I think, the Universal Studios, or they had some license to like a private stock music thing that like Universal and SYFY and a couple of other people use that we got access to.
The music was, when I first heard the music, I was like, Ross, where did you find this? Like the chorus is "We will rise above," like, and then you're climbing. It was so good.
Yeah. It was just luck, honestly. Like it was actually a very quick find. Sometimes you spend possibly even days just combing through these libraries trying to find the right search term or the right beats per minute, or to
just like we got lucky with the intro to this podcast, like that song.
Yeah.
Heard.
Yeah, it was like
first one. Listen, like
yeah.
It was
like the third one we've listened to.
Yeah, I wish we did like another 30 minutes of it today. But anyways, yeah.
Yep. And so we send over the animatic, and it's still a rough draft because it's all the storyboard frames, but it gives you a much better scope of what the video looks like. Once we get that approval, I mean, you just kind of go from there, right? Like there were no further approvals from that point.
We do a keyframe pretty often too, though, where it's like, this is the final rendering style.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you render out like one or two frames for like more involved feature animations and things like that. You might do several like background concept art type situations, but you basically render out one final frame so that you can kind of put the rough draft to a final in your head.
How long does it take? What kind of software do you use?
Mostly the Adobe suite.
Okay.
We don't have a huge restriction on what our artists use in-house. We have licenses to the Adobe suite, but Clip Studio is another really popular software that can save out Photoshop files. And so as long as the end files end up being what they need to be, like all the specs are all correct, that stuff doesn't matter as much. Personally, I use Photoshop and After Effects and Premiere and the full Adobe suite.
How long does it take to kind of get all that put together then, especially in After Effects? I've used that before and it takes me like a full day to do like 5 seconds worth of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's rough. So usually, obviously, it depends on the complexity of the scene. Sometimes you can get away with setting up a scene that's going to be largely frozen on screen for 5 seconds or so, and you can set that up in an hour, and it's great. There's a lot of tricks you can do in animation where, flashing lights or like a slight movement in the background kind of distract from the fact that everything else in the scene is completely still. And in fact, there's several scenes in this, like when the knight grabs the hair, it's kind of a close up. There's like a solid 2 or 3 seconds out of 20 seconds that there's no movement at all.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
You just don't really notice it as much if the whole thing is put together in an entertaining and like properly paced fashion.
Sure. Let's watch it one more time and kind of on the verge of wrapping things up here. And maybe just tell me a few more things that might be interesting to know.
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's check it out one more time. So you've got that down, and you are ready to show it to SYFY. How are you feeling? Is there ever a point where you know, okay, we're done, this is it, or are you always like, oh, we could have done this more, but we're up against the time limit?
No, there's never a point.
Yeah, it's never done.
You're done.
No, it's never done.
And it's actually a skill in being a professional artist that you have to train like any muscle, is knowing when the audience is no longer going to notice edits. Right. So you will always see them, right? You'll always see opportunities where, the light is flickering here, or like you could have changed the shadows here, or so on and so forth, or the pop in this person's step isn't quite right. But there's a point that you have to kind of train yourself with, and I'm still on that journey.
We help each other with that a lot, actually, Ross. Yeah.
He's knowing that it's done when the juice is no longer worth the squeeze.
Like sometimes I'll give Ross feedback on something, and he's like, "Carl, no one is going to see that. Let's keep it moving." Because we are like literally pixel retentive. If it was up to Ross and I, everything would take another, I don't know, 2 days at least of just like micro little details, right? So that's why the podcast came about with that name, which is perfect. And we joke each other about it all the time now. It's like it's just since we picked out the name, like we were working on a piece that we're doing for a convention, a D&D convention. We did some sponsorship, and I was like, "Hey, well, this thing needs to go over," and we're just like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, he's talking about
cards this big.
He's talking about moving a like corner design of this 2x3 inch card, right?
Yeah.
Like 2 pixels.
I was like, it's not even there. Like,
yeah, it's we're talking like millimeters of space, if that.
Yeah, but yeah, so I wanted to bring up in this piece, the Rapunzel skit. I had us do a little Easter egg, right? So when you see the camera shot pan in where the knight and Rapunzel are there, and the background on a table is a bottle with a wisp in it, and the wisp is like our mascot with Epic made. Like you'll see it on a lot of our different stuff. So we snuck that in there too, which was cool. We do that from time to time, little Easter eggs. So
yeah,
that's my favorite part.
Very cool. So you've got what you wish was better, but it's basically going to be the final piece that you submit to them. What's their reaction?
Oh yeah, I mean they loved it. Well, we had I think this project was one of the very few that had just hardly any edits or revisions. I think we went back and forth a few times on what the final presentation of the SYFY logo needed to look like, because when you deal with brands and networks that are this large, they have really, really, really specific rules on how you display their logo and what you can and can't manipulate and things like that. Like originally, I think we made their logo out of clouds, and it was too deformed to be recognizable as a SYFY logo for them. So we went back and forth a lot on that one section. But other than that, it really didn't have any major changes. We really just we really showed up on it, and it impressed them quite a bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then once they accept it, how long before it airs?
A month, I think.
Yeah, I think at that point it was a month. That varies as well from client to client. Some clients who have their stuff together, they'll have 3-4 months before they need to air it. There's been a couple situations with like Nickelodeon, for example. There's a couple of situations where they needed something for fall, and we were doing it into like the end of September. They were like, "We'll just post it tomorrow. It'll be fine."
And it just depends on the campaign and what's going on and when they brought us in, and it's all good.
So this one was kind of your first big network type project.
Correct.
It airs. Take me, just final question here. What happens for you guys once that airs?
Yeah, so like we start getting phone calls from people, and like people that have followed us and known us our whole lives, like, oh my God, we saw, because they actually had like a buy Epic Made logo splash at the end and stuff, which was like really cool, very validating. And then I entered into the American Advertising Federation's the Addy Awards, and we actually got Best in Show and Gold Addy. So first time we'd ever won an award for anything. We got Best in the Show across all categories in it was a regional show, which was really cool. So like it was a really it was a big chunk of Virginia. So that was also again super validating. So many things that just like kind of gave us the momentum we needed to get through what would become like the hardest years of the business in some regard, with COVID and all the craziness that went on there.
Right. And like we stated earlier, we were then able to kind of use those accolades to say, hey, we've done work for SYFY. Not only did we now have what was almost unyielding faith from this agency, where they now knew that if we pitched something, it was going to knock it out of the park. So we started getting work way, way faster. Like to the point where
every other time we pitch.
Yeah. So to the point where if we no longer wanted to pitch on SYFY stuff because we just didn't need the budgets. They're never great for these type of relationships, and so we almost didn't need the work for SYFY anymore. We wanted to go after these other brands so we can collect them all, so to speak.
Would you say that this video that we watched was maybe the most significant milestone in the lifespan of Epic Made?
We've had a few.
I'd say it's definitely top 3. Maybe even top 2. It's hard to say. Like there was one before this that like helped us find who we are and what we wanted to niche into, that we would have never gone this route had we not have done that. So
there's a client that transformed us from graphic design agency to like loud, detail-rich, creative agency, right? And so you could argue that is the most significant change because the other changes wouldn't have had a chance to occur without it. SYFY was a big, eye-opening experience and a huge sort of resolve, like stealing of the company's resolve for what it could do. And then we're actually in the middle of what I guess would be our third big opportunity, where we're getting into a little bit more of the Web3 space and trying to see what the future looks like for creative and seeing what those opportunities look like. And so that's a huge project as well.
It's so much fun too. This one's probably our favorite project ever. So.
Nice. Very nice. Well, best wishes on that. Hey guys, it's been great to talk to you about this one today. Learned a lot, and it's fun to hear about your process. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to future episodes.
Absolutely. Thanks so much,
Okay.
Chad.
So long, everybody.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.